Alright, I've got 2 packages today. One from Right Stuff. And I'm not quite sure what this... Well, I don't know what either of them are. Oh, those look like hentai. Well, let me open them up outside of camera so I can make sure, you know, that they're racy but okay to show. Yeah, but so that's a made for pleasure Blu-ray and DVD versions, which as far as I could tell is okay. I guess the back is okay to show too. I mean, I've shown more risque stuff from non-hentai anime, which I'm sure some people would question about whether or not they're actually non-hentai or not. Alright, and then we got evil packaging, which, yeah, that's the little thing. Ooh, and we have, first up, El Hazard. I did not pronounce that well. Hold on, what's this sticker? I don't know what this sticker is, but I'm just taking it off. It looks like it says El Hazard on it. That's weird. Oof. Anyways, we have The Magnificent World. This is at least OVA 1 and 2. That's a line, okay. It's been a long time since I've watched this series. I'm trying to remember what I remember about it at all. And the only thing I remember for certain was that one guy and his sister could talk to the bug people, and that was kind of fun. And they're none of these characters, I think. Focus, focus. Region A. Probably has dub. Where is it? Audio on here. Audio. That's it. I think that says Japanese and English, but I'll be honest, I can barely read it on this screen. So y'all are probably having a better chance. It's part of the artwork. If this gives you slight Tenchimuyo vibes, well, look, there's the guy. I don't remember her, but she's clearly one of the insect people. Who dat? Fuck. I don't remember so much of this show. And then last but not least, we got Fire Force Season 2, Part 1. I should try to find Season 1, Part 1. Because I know where Season 1, Part 2 is. I see it just back over there. But if I were to try to watch this, I would have to, you know, watch from the very beginning. So looking at it, Company 8 is back in Season 2, Regions A and B. And most likely, any limited edition versions of this would probably come out. Oh shit, that's some tenacious plastic. There we go. Most likely come out with Season 2, Part 2. I just am not managing this space. I don't know, I'm getting a little zony. I've been a little zony all night, so it's wrong to say I'm getting there. I'm already there, having trouble getting away from it. I say it like I haven't had trouble all day. Yeah, you got Firefoot. You got DVDs 2-in-1 and Blu-rays 2-in-1. Tried to escape. I don't feel it clicking in there. Oh well. Well, I know it's small. I was hoping it would be a little bigger than this with the other thing, but yeah, well, here's this week's anime DVD collection update.
So, nothing in the way of anime watch to talk about. So, if you stick around here for that, you can go ahead and take off. You have my permission. Basically, I guess the three things that went on that made not a lot of anime watching happening. First of all, my Friday friend, I forgot that he was actually going to be out of town. So, naturally, that means didn't watch Alicization. And also VR chat updated to Unity 2019, and while I didn't have anything particularly big to do there per se, I mean, I'll talk about that in a little bit. It did kind of mean that I was doing some more Unity focused stuff. So, and the other thing is I kind of chose to explore a non-anime series, but basically, the only anime I've really watched is little bits and some pieces of Code Geass. Had people in one of my Discord groups, kind of gushing a little bit about it. I'm like, yeah, I can gush about it too. I've always really liked what it did, and it is definitely a very watchable and approachable. I should probably rewatch it to make sure, but I kind of feel like it stands up. And if you've never seen it and you do watch it, definitely give the entire first episode a shot, because you probably won't have a very good idea of what the anime will be like for you until you've completed the entire first episode. Unless, you're kind of aware of what happens, this and that. But episode 1 kind of gives you a feeling of, no, this is just another, I don't know, maybe a political kind of show. And if you really like that, maybe you'd be disappointed it makes the turn it does, but, and that's kind of related to the non-anime thing we're talking about. But, for the most part, you're like, okay, well, if it's talking about politics in this fake universe, I'm not sure why I should care, and that's just me personally. But then it just kind of ends on a what the fuck moment. And, there's something to be said about shows that end the first episode with everybody going, what the fuck? And, like, Code Geass is, I think, a really good episode for that, where I think it's mostly us, the audience, but a couple characters as well. It's really great. I think another good example that comes to mind is Figure 17, which is, I think, a less heard of show, and I wouldn't say that if you like Code Geass, you would necessarily like Figure 17. It's just, for that first episode, what the fuckness, Figure 17 is kind of neat because it feels a lot more real than a lot of shows that you tend to watch. And I don't even mean like, oh yeah, it looks like someone took a camcorder and recorded video. What I mean is the way the characters act, just kind of feels more homely, real life-ish, and less like, oh, they're reading off a script. And not everything in there behaves. The dog doesn't behave completely dog-like, but, I kind of like how all the people, persons, whatever, kind of don't. They say things that are just kind of stupid, where you're like, I understand what you're saying before you're trying to say it, and you're just explaining it very badly to a little girl. But I really like it because it feels real. Like, it's really weird. And first episode just kind of ends with absolutely everybody going, what the fuck? And when I mean absolutely everyone, I get, okay, technically that makes it sound like the entire world goes, what the fuck, and that's more related to what's happened there. But no, it's more like all the main characters involved are just going, what the fuck? The monster's going, what the fuck? The suit is going, what the fuck? The little girl's going, what the fuck? The alien's going, what the fuck? The dog, his mind was just completely blown and he wasn't acting like a dog. But at some level, he was all the time. Everybody was just like, what the fuck? And it's a real, I think it's a great way to start a series. And to be fair, maybe you don't know if you'll want to continue watching Code Geass, but if you do give it the 3-episode thing, and Code Geass is a lot more fair in that regard, considering, you know, if you watch 3 episodes of a 12-episode series, you just watched the quarter of the entire series. With Code Geass, since it's actually two core seasons, we're talking about 3 episodes out of 50-something. And at that point, you can be like, yeah, sure. 3 episodes, I could give 3 episodes a shot. But I suspect if you watch it for the first time, you'll find that it's very compelling before the end of that 3rd episode. Which pretty much means that the first episode isn't a one-shot wonder. And that's kind of what's good about this series. It's not a one-shot wonder. It starts the 2nd season off doing something that's a little weird, but you can forgive a show for not doing everything perfect, I think. Where was I thinking with all this? Yes. So basically, you know, that's my chance to gush about Code Geass. I did mention VR chat stuff. So one of the things that broke with the Unity 2019 update is kind of the way this kind of quirky Unity behavior works, that it's a mechanism used for certain systems, and since a lot of avatars don't tend to get built based upon quirks, usually that's not a problem. This one just happened to break. So my main avatar is Alice Margatroyd from Project Toho. If you don't know her, she's basically a yokai mage, and she's the kind that used to be human. It's my understanding that Toho kind of has mages that were just yokai forever, and then you have humans who were mages who kind of became yokai, and I think most of that has to do with figuring out how to use magic to rid yourself of the necessities of being human to a certain degree. Anyways, that's a long story. The main point is, you know, she's a doll maker, so she makes dolls and she puppets dolls, and doll stuff is something she does. So my VR chat avatar has always been Alice Margatroyd. Mostly it was just trying to figure out what I wanted. It's like, oh, maybe I'll try Toho, and then eventually figuring out, okay, I like the dress, and the Yukari one wasn't quite doing it, so I'm like, oh, I'll just wear this Alice one. And now I've stuck with that for, 3 years now? And so my main avatar has always had a doll. Well, I say always as if, it didn't take me a long time learning a lot of stuff to do it, but for the longest time now, my main avatar has a doll that it's pretty much a utility. So it's not just there to float. I can also use it to kind of fly around and take a look at stuff, help people move around. A lot of weird things. Cast light. It's great because it's a very Alice Margatroyd avatar. And what broke was its ability to follow me independently of me. So normally I could have it like it's attached to the same space my avatar is, but for it to follow me, I basically that broke, and my ability to pilot it, because that following was the thing that I built the drone stuff off of, so I couldn't remote control it, make it move around either. And I might still want to go back to fix that stuff, but basically that broke mostly because it's dependent on one of those quirks, the following system specifically. The drone stuff isn't, but the way I'd integrated stuff together, it was a mess of things going back and forth, and I didn't have as clear a picture of what I needed to do when I was first building it. And so one of the big things I did this weekend was I completely rebuilt that from scratch, using all the knowledge I had learned about how all the mechanisms work, while at the same time making it a little more portable, taking notes on how I could add it to other avatars. And this was making the drone part completely independently, so that any followers I came up with, the drone would be able to use the follower in order to make the drone choose to fly back to me, as opposed to just teleporting back into its reset position. And I was able to successfully use and manually integrate the the vrlabs.dev follower. They have a new version. I was using the old one for the previous avatar, and this new version, yeah, it's there, works just fine. The only problem is the way it moves is a little not quite what I want. It's good for a follower, it's just not good for the utility aspect that I've had my doll do stuff for. So, you know, I probably still want to go back and explore, but I spent the weekend rebuilding my drone system, making it portable, and pretty much I didn't want to rebuild the current avatar in case I figure out how I want its follower to work again. So I made a new one and I had to kind of start copying a whole lot of the utility over, which also came with a lot of cleanup, and it is a lot cleaner now, and I'm glad that I had that opportunity, but it did also mean that, you know, I lost a lot of time this weekend doing that, and also working on migrating another avatar from SDK2 to SDK3, mostly because I had been talking speculative stuff that I'd always had in the back of my mind and just needed to experiment with and figure out, and finally this was an excuse to do that. And it has to do with removing the need for a special shader from an avatar, so that so that instead of using a special shader, it's using one of the ones that is in Quest and mimicking some of the behavior of that shader using the animation controller that SDK3 provides, which basically means that Quest has a more functional looking avatar now, which is hopefully good. Hopefully it doesn't do a huge performance impact or anything like that, but I'm glad I spent the time doing that. I might not be completely done with it, but I am far enough along that it's like I can take a pause point until I come up with a hypothesis on how to fix a weird rendering issue that mostly you don't notice until you have to change the avatar's color, and you only notice it on the PC side for some stupid reason. Fucking hell. Yeah, I can't think of what any of those things would do, so yeah. I suspect it's something on the model itself, but I'm not quite sure how I would be able to verify for certain. Putting all that aside, you know, that was, as you can probably tell, that's still in my mind. It's something I've been hitting my head against. It's part of the reason I'm kind of out of it today. It's because I just did not sleep very well, because I was still problem solving in my sleep and going to bed and not dreaming very deeply, and I was just fortunate that the Sunday to Monday sleep just happened to be non-deep stuff that didn't have to do with problem solving. If you've never had nights like that, then I don't know if I would hope that you don't have to, because at the same time you kind of have some good thoughts when your brain's like churning, even though it's kind of painful because you spend most of the time being unable to test the changes, and so your brain's like trying to come up with these ideas and it can't really move forward until it actually tests stuff. Weird stuff. So as for things I watched, I guess I can really quickly talk about Rick and Morty, because I did see the latest episode, and I do like that it didn't blow up into this big thing, because season 5 does that a lot, but it is still a pretty busy episode, even for one that's a little more reflective, I guess would be the one word I would use for it without hopefully spoiling too much. And again, I don't think any episode of season 5, I haven't felt like any of them are bad, but I have kind of felt like they're busy and they don't feel like they're as impactful. And I think they could have like toned some aspects of this one down a little bit and it would have been good, but I feel like for season 5 they have this tendency to want to make every episode epic, and this episode resisted against that a bit. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of weakness to it. And I could be mistaken. It could just be the way I'm perceiving things, but yeah, kind of curious if there's one more episode or 2 more episodes. Because I know that YouTube is showing a season finale promo, but it's for an air date that's far enough in the future that maybe we're waiting 3 weeks for that, or maybe there's one more episode between this one and that one, and I don't really know. I can probably just look it up, but you know, it's interesting. I'm kind of curious to see where season 5 ends. Yeah. And I guess I don't want to speculate too much on it because there's plenty of speculation out there, and I'll just see what it is and kind of give my overall impression for season 5. Unless it's more than just the one episode that's remaining. Yeah, I'll play that by ear. So the other big thing I've been watching is The Expanse. And seems to be a good show. I'd say the real problem with it, and this isn't like a, oh, this makes the show bad problem. This is, so it kind of got sold to me on the prospect that it's a hard sci-fi space sort of thing with elements in it that are kind of representative of some of the unknown out there sort of concepts. But for the most part, it doesn't start out that way, and I don't know that that's, like, there's kind of a thread through that through the first, so I'm mostly through the second season. So obviously I've been watching a lot, but this is the advantage of something that you can kind of have on in the background while you're working on Unity stuff. You can just have it on in the background while you're working on Unity stuff. Unlike, you know, Uzaki-chan, where I've been watching that one subtitled, and because of that I have to actually pay attention to it in order to watch it. So, you know, having it on in the background, some of the elements that drew some people to this series, I can see why they didn't continue with the series. Like, the first season definitely has some, I'd say the main two ideas actually driving it are politics and noir. And while the noir thing is new for this kind of amusing observation I'd make, when it comes to, oh yes, it's politics, potential war, Earth, Mars, space colonies, well, that's pretty much Gundam. And without the mechas, that is. And it's not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but, you know, I'm not sure if that's a part of Gundam I ever cared about, because every single Gundam seems to go, oh yes, here's people politicking. That sounds a lot better. And, you know, that's never been my thing. Usually I like something that's doing that for a different reason. I think Code Geass might be a good example, because that politicking does happen there, but there's a different story that's the real draw to that, and the politicking is just kind of a stage for it. And I've mentioned before that noir in and of itself is not something that draws me in. It usually, it's just the spice that something is that gives it a interesting, different tone. You know, I've watched some anime like that, and I really hate that I always go back to Who Framed Roger Rabbit as an example of a noir that I enjoy, but Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a noir that I enjoy. And so the fact that this shows mostly those two things is kind of what makes it hard. There is definitely some element to they are in space and they have to survive in space and do spacey sort of stuff and have space worries and all that. It's kind of there. I know people said it was hard sci-fi. I wouldn't call it hard. I would still call it kind of moderate. So, like, there's still some elements of they're playing around with things that don't really make sense from a physics standpoint. I think, as an example, travel time between destinations and a little bit of communication. I know they introduced some stuff in there, but it isn't always, I think it's not always as accurate. Maybe they try to play with it that way a little bit. I don't know. That can be a little iffy. And some of the what's out there sort of stuff, you know, some of that isn't quite there. But the supposed efficient space drive thing is kind of an interesting one, because at the end of the day, I think the general idea that they've come up with is that and they don't explain this until season 2, but I think it's okay to explain it because it's just kind of present throughout all of season 1, and it's why they never kind of talk about or address it. It's because supposedly they have a much more efficient fuel system, and efficient fuel system kind of sounds like, oh yeah, that sounds like hard sci-fi, but it only kind of exists to a certain degree, because at the end of the day, if you're located here and you want to be here traveling at this velocity, you're talking about a gain in energy, and you're going to be having to take energy in one form and transforming it into another, and it's really hard to say that you can just say, oh, well, we suddenly did this thing. Like, they kind of indicate that it was very sudden, the discovery of this, which kind of allowed people to be more exploratory and out there. It kind of beggars, it kind of just doesn't quite feel right, because it's still one of those things where you still have to gain a bunch of energy and lose a bunch of energy and stuff in order to do this stuff, and a lot of space exploration stuff that we do right now is all about not that stuff. And there was also that thing, and yeah, I'm not going to really say that, because that's an amusing problem. But yeah, for the most part, you got that stuff. Season 2 is both better and worse, and I don't mean that from an objective standpoint, but rather from the very subjective standpoint of the thing I was looking for, and there was probably more, here's space stuff, but here's this otherworldly theme sort of thing going on, and it's not really very present in season 1, but it is very present in season 2. So while that sounds like a net gain, the trade-off is the noir elements have been phased out because the story has moved forward by leaps and bounds past where that stuff still makes sense. Which means that for people who got into the show because they like the noir elements, I can easily see that they just don't care as much past that because they were never into the politic element, and maybe this mystery thing isn't what they're looking for in the shows they watch. So it's really quite interesting, and yeah, this was the one that's like, oh, I guess it's interesting that Code Geass came up in relation to that, because Code Geass has a lot of politicking in it as well, and I think I was hinting on or thinking about that, and there was something else I was thinking about, but yeah. For the most part, though, I would say that personally, I think it's a better show than Game of Thrones. Which isn't to say that Game of Thrones didn't have its moments, but I kind of remember first season, I spent half of the first season saying, why should I care about any of this again? Why should I care about any of this again? It kept introducing stuff, and it's like, okay, yeah, but if you introduce stuff to me for 4 hours, I'm not going to care about them. And The Expanse didn't do that, so it just, I think, tried to make the show interesting in ways that doesn't necessarily draw me in, but are effective. And I can criticize a couple of little things I did here and there, but for the most part, it's one of those things where it's sort of like Ellicization, where I'm kind of curious to see where it goes. What's it going to do? I'm here in season 2, and I really don't like that Martian lady, but I think we're not supposed to entirely like her. I mean, there's some elements of her that are like, I'm kind of wanting to see what they do with her. But, you can kind of tell she has her biases, and most of the characters in this show are bad in some way. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any character that hasn't been bad in some way, and that can be kind of exhausting. And that's kind of a complete opposite of Code Geass, because, like I said, one of the clever things Code Geass does is it kind of does this topsy-turvy thing, where it's not completely out of the question to have your protagonist be a villain and your antagonist be the hero. That's telling the story usually from the opposite point of view. But antagonist doesn't mean villain. It just means the person that is against the person that you're watching. But the interesting thing about Code Geass is it kind of takes it a step above that reversal by also making our main character villainous, but with somewhat good/heroic kind of motivations. So he kind of does the wrong thing for the right reasons, whereas the antagonist does the right things for the wrong reasons. And it's this weird double flop that allows the show to, kind of keep going and kind of be thought-provoking at the way, where you kind of go through there and say, okay, was what that character did actually right or not? Because it gives you enough window to say, yeah, I appreciate the good thing that guy just tried to do, but he should have known that it would have only had bad consequences. And he probably did, but he's kind of stuck in his thing, whereas our other guy's like, yeah, that's a pretty villainous thing to do, but at the end of the day, only other bad people ended up getting hurt sometimes. It's sort of like Dexter. If you're not familiar with the show Dexter, and I'm not very familiar with it, I've never watched it, I know that there's some controversy with the way it ended in the last season, and something about maybe it just went through too many hands and kind of wouldn't have been able to go on doing the same thing it had done, so it did something slightly different. That's not a very precise description. But basically, Dexter, our main character, is a serial killer who only kills other serial killers. And so, to that regard, you could say, there is some problems with that, but at the same time, that kind of gets a little bit closer to this idea where, if he's removing serial killers from the street, maybe what he's doing isn't good, but it's not entirely bad either. It exists in this very uncomfortable gray spot where we're like, if caught, we should probably punish him anyways, because that's not the way we want to handle it. But it gets hard to argue that they're not being helpful or productive or something like that. I don't know. A lot of weird thoughts. Again, Code Geass, great. The Expanse, it's okay. You may enjoy it. Rick and Morty, enjoyable. Have to see where this season's going. And yeah. So the only problem is, I talked about this Code Geass stuff, but I don't know where my that Code Geass sequel movie thing is. I saw my videos that I received it on, I think, March last year, which gives me some vague ideas, but so far I haven't found them. And yeah, I know some of y'all are thinking, what about all these fucking piles? And yeah, I have been looking through these piles, and I did find the movie versions of Code Geass. It's a 3-movie steelbook collection, because according to what I was saying in the video, I got a steelbook of the Code Geass movie, but I don't know where I fucking put it. Which makes me think that I actually put it in a box, because I've been through these piles not completely 100% thoroughly, but I can tell that this pile does not have any steelbooks in it. So it's definitely not in that pile. Unless I have a non-steelbook version and I didn't understand what I said. Most likely it's in one of the boxes. And I don't see it in any of my notes about the boxes over there, which means either I put it in a box and was a dumbass and forgot to note it, or more likely I put it in one of those boxes back there where I've been putting stuff from these piles as these piles get too big. So I have a lot of stuff to fucking figure out. But I don't know, that was just an enjoyable way to end this. Y'all, have a nice week.